At 5:19 local time, the sea looks almost unreal, flat, silent, and empty. Then, on the radar, 3 contacts appear within moments of each other. Not clutter, not weather, clean surface returns. 22 nautical miles out, staggered bearings, speed already building. Inside the Combat Information Center, no one rushes to fill the silence. Voices stay measured. The system speaks first. Tracks begin to classify automatically. Rough vectors stretch across the display. 3 surface contacts, closing fast. Up on the flight deck, a yellow shirt crewman stops in mid-step. An aircraft tug idles for a second, then powers down. The catapults remain cold, but the deck falls into the kind of quiet only sailors recognize. Not panic, focus. New contacts bearing 214 through 231. The watch officer leans in, eyes fixed on the plot. These are not fishing boats. Their profiles are too sharp. Their speed changes too deliberate. No AIS. No radio traffic. At 5:21, the contacts accelerate again. 20 knots, then 24. The carrier does not alter course. In CIC, long-range cameras cue automatically. Electro-optical feeds flare to life across auxiliary screens. Through the haze, gray hulls begin to take shape, still distant but unmistakable. Low silhouettes, squared bows, compact superstructures, naval vessels. One technician adjusts the gain. Another tags the feed. Timestamps lock in. Every second is now part of the record. Maintain steady course. No raised voices, no theatrics. At 5:23, the spacing between the 3 ships tightens. They are no longer moving in parallel. They are arranging themselves with purpose. One holds the center line. 2 drift outward, widening the angle. A fan. That geometry matters. Ships that are merely observing tend to trail or pace. Intercepting ships cut across. This is neither. This is containment, drawn slowly and carefully across open water. Range, 16 nautical miles. The identification officer studies the imagery frame by frame. Mast layout, sensor placement, forward mounts. He does not hurry. He does not need to. Then the image sharpens. A block of color snaps into focus on the aft mast of the lead ship. North Korea. No one in the room reacts outwardly. No one repeats the country name. It goes into the log, and that is enough. At 5:26, the closest point of approach updates. The projected CPA drops below 3 nautical miles. Too close to be random. Too close to blame on navigation. The officer of the deck gives one brief glance at the repeater, then back toward the forward viewports. The horizon still looks calm, unchanged, empty, misleading. Key stations are manned. Readiness shifts quietly across the ship. No siren, no announcement over the 1 MC, just a subtle change in posture that spreads like a held breath. Below decks, watertight doors stay open, but sailors adjust where they stand. Helmets are close. Gloves go on. Pens pause over logbooks. At 5:28, the 2 outer ships alter course by 2 degrees each. Small moves, precise moves. They are narrowing the angle, pressing the carrier's projected path into a tighter corridor. Still no radio calls, no warning, no explanation. The carrier continues straight ahead, speed unchanged. 45,000 tons does not flinch. A Seahawk begins to spin up on deck. Not rushed, not hostile, simply prepared. Its blades blur into a flat gray disc as it lifts and settles off the starboard quarter. High enough to observe, far enough to remain neutral. Cameras are rolling. At 14 nautical miles, the lead North Korean ship increases speed again. Its wake stretches longer. The bow settles harder into the water, subtle to the eye, obvious to the system. Intent confirmed. This is no longer presence. This is pressure. Inside CIC, the timeline tightens. Bearings refresh faster. Distance drops in steady, unforgiving increments. Almost every variable stays stable, except them. At 5:31, the CPA falls below 2 nautical miles. That number lingers on the screen longer than the others. 2 miles is not collision distance. It is miscalculation distance. It is the space where one bad helm order, one misunderstood move, turns steel into headlines. Still, the carrier does not maneuver. The Seahawk shifts slightly, keeping all 3 ships in frame. And somewhere between the silence on the bridge and the low electrical hum below, the truth settles over everyone at once. This is no drill. The next move will decide who controls what comes next. At 5:33 local time, the pattern becomes undeniable. 3 contacts, 3 vectors, no randomness left. The center ship holds a steady line, aimed not at the carrier itself, but at the water directly ahead of it. The outer 2 continue their slow outward drift, widening the fan just enough to reduce easy options. This is not pursuit. This is shaping. In the Combat Information Center, the Surface Warfare Coordinator does not speculate. He measures. Formation is intentional. No one disagrees. The ships hold 24 knots, not maximum speed, but chosen speed. Fast enough to close, slow enough to signal control. It is calibrated pressure. The carrier's navigation solution updates. Altering course now would shorten CPA with at least one contact. Turning away would look like concession. Turning in would tighten the trap, so the carrier does neither. She holds her line. At 5:35, electronic support measures detect intermittent emissions from the lead ship. Short pulses, low power, not a fire control lock, not standard search radar either. Probing behavior, testing response times, mapping reactions. The waveform is logged, cataloged, tagged. Above deck, nothing changes. The Seahawk slides laterally in a wide orbit, its sensors doing the work. Forward-looking infrared tracks exhaust plumes and confirms sustained high output from the approaching ships. They are not drifting, they are driving in. Still no radio calls from the North Korean vessels. That silence matters. Professional mariners announce intent, even aggressive intent. At this range, silence removes ambiguity in only one direction. At 5:37, the outer ship on the port side tightens its turn by 3 degrees. A minor adjustment on paper, a serious change in maneuvering room. The CPA updates again, 1.8 nautical miles. The watch team reads it out, not because it is emotional, but because it is fact. On the bridge, the captain studies the horizon through bare glass. No binoculars, no raised voice. He does not need either. The ship is already speaking to him in numbers. Below, CIC cross-checks radar returns with optical feeds. Hull numbers are obscured. Paint looks clean. Covers remain on the visible mounts, but deck crews can be seen. Helmets on. Movement purposeful. Nothing casual. At 5:39, the lead ship reduces speed slightly to 22 knots. That is the tell. This is not a rush, it is pacing. They want the carrier to reach a certain patch of ocean at a certain moment with fewer and fewer options. Pressure without contact. The Seahawk camera zooms in on the bridge windows of the lead ship. Heat signatures cluster inside. More personnel than a routine watch would require. Eyes on the glass, hands near railings. Everything is time-stamped. Everything is archived. At 5:41, the carrier's escorts tighten formation. Not visibly, not dramatically, but enough for their radar envelopes to overlap completely. To the naked eye, nothing changes. To the sensors, the picture becomes whole. The North Korean ships continue to close. 1 nautical mile, 9/10. Still no hail. Now the silence is louder than any threat broadcast could be. Inside CIC, the rule is simple. Shadowing ends when maneuvering space is deliberately constrained. This is no longer coincidence, no longer navigation. It is intent. But intent alone is not enough. Action begins only when a line is crossed. At 5:43, the starboard side North Korean ship makes its move. A deliberate bow and adjustment, not aggressive in speed, aggressive in angle. It is no longer trying to pass, no longer trying to trail. It is moving to arrive ahead of the carrier's projected track, to block. The room goes still. No alarms, no shouted commands, only the soft tapping of keyboards as the track updates and the CPA recalculates. 1.3 nautical miles. That number is inside the space where misunderstanding stops being a convincing explanation. The carrier still does not alter course. The Seahawk holds position, visible and unmistakable, but neutral. At this distance, every action is being seen. Every emission is being recorded. Every decision will be replayed later, frame by frame, stripped of excuses. This is the point where posturing either ends or becomes something else, and the ships closing in know it. Because from here on, the burden of escalation no longer belongs to the carrier. It belongs to the ships still advancing. At 5:45 local time, separation drops below 1 nautical mile. By itself, that number is not dramatic. Ships pass closer than that in crowded straits every day. But this is open ocean. No traffic lanes, no weather, no reason. In CIC, track history scrolls across the display. Every maneuver appears in clean digital lines. The pattern is no longer developing. It is complete. The lead North Korean ship alters course again, and this time the move is unmistakable. The bow swings inward, cutting directly across the carrier's projected path rather than pacing it. Speed remains steady. The wake flares wide. This is not navigation. This is obstruction. The surface warfare coordinator speaks in the same controlled tone as before. Contact is maneuvering to block. The CPA collapses to less than 1,000 yards. That is the line on the bridge. The captain watches through the forward glass. No optics, no hesitation. He has seen this geometry before. Everyone in the room has. A blocking maneuver at this range forces a choice. Turn away and surrender space. Turn in and risk impact. Hold course and make the other ship decide. The carrier holds course. Below decks, the ship's posture rises another notch. Not visible, not dramatic, but complete. Systems that were waiting are now ready. Displays change color. Tracking gates narrow. The difference is quiet. and total. The Seahawk slides laterally, keeping the blocking ships centered. The camera zooms just enough to catch the forward mount. Still covered, not manned, but sailors are nearby. Close enough, ready enough. At 5:47, the North Korean ship closes inside 800 yards. At this range, intent is no longer inferred. It is declared by movement. The carrier's escorts keep station. They do not crowd in, they do not fall back. Their presence fills the electromagnetic spectrum even if it does not fill the horizon. No radio warnings, no flares, no horns. Nothing more needs to be said. Inside CIC, one system shifts from monitor to active ready. No one announces it. The console simply confirms the new state. Logged, time-stamped. The blocking ship continues forward on its intercept vector. Then, for the first time, it hesitates. The bow correction slows. Rudder angle eases. Not much, just enough for the system to notice. The hesitation lasts less than 5 seconds. But 5 seconds is enough, because it means the bridge on the other ship is no longer calculating dominance. It is calculating risk. At 5:49, the second North Korean ship adjusts as well, widening its turn instead of tightening it. The formation loses its symmetry. The fan breaks. The lead ship corrects again, trying to recover the position. Too late. The carrier's unchanged course has pushed the decision back onto them. Block and commit, or yield and disengage. The Seahawk sensor operator zooms further. Faces become visible behind the bridge glass. Heat signatures rise and fall as people move. Hands gesture. Someone points forward, then down toward instruments. Inside CIC, the plot updates leave. The CPA stabilizes, then grows. 900 yards becomes 1,000, then 1,400. The blocking maneuver dissolves into a parallel track. The carrier never moved. At 5:52, the lead North Korean ship reduces speed. Its wake shortens. The bow lifts slightly as throttle comes back. That reduction says everything. It is retreat without the formality of turning away. The other two ships follow, each peeling outward by a few degrees, restoring safe separation one vector at a time. No radio calls accompany the shift. None are needed. The encounter ends the same way it began, in silence. But something fundamental has changed. The ocean is still calm, the horizon is still empty, yet control of the moment has shifted for good. The North Korean ships remain nearby, visible on sensors and optics, but their geometry no longer constrains. Their speed no longer pressures. Their formation no longer threatens. They pushed to the line and discovered the line did not move. By 5:55, the CPA has opened beyond 2 nautical miles. The Seahawk widens its orbit, and the carrier continues on its original heading. Its wake stays unbroken, its speed unchanged. No celebration, no commentary. Only the quiet certainty that the worst of it has already passed, and that the outcome was decided not by firepower, but by who refused to blink. By 5:58 local time, the encounter shifts into a different phase. The distance is opening, the geometry is loosening, but no one relaxes. In many ways, this is the most dangerous window of all. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tracks remain firmly locked, not as a show of aggression, but as a matter of discipline. Every bearing change, every throttle adjustment, every brief pulse of emission continues to be logged. The system does not forget simply because the pressure has eased. The 3 North Korean ships are no longer closing in, but they have not left either. They hold at range, offset near the carrier's port and starboard quarters, keeping themselves visible without pressing forward. It is a shift in posture, not surrender. Observation, not withdrawal. The Seahawk climbs slightly, widening its sensor horizon. From above, the picture is clear. The formation that had once compressed the carrier's maneuvering space is now drifting unevenly. Each ship begins making its own corrections rather than moving as one. That loss of synchronization matters. Tight formations create pressure. Broken ones absorb it. At 6:01, electronic support measures detect one final burst of low-power radar from the northernmost ship. Short duration, broad sweep, not targeting, curiosity. A last look. The waveform is captured, catalogued, and added to a growing library that now knows more than the other side likely intended to reveal. On the bridge, the captain says nothing. He keeps his eyes on the water ahead, not on the ships behind. That alone tells the crew everything they need to know. An encounter like this is not over because it feels over. It is over only when time, distance, and behavior all say the same thing. Below decks, readiness remains unchanged. No systems stand down. Nothing resets early. At 6:04, the southernmost North Korean ship alters course 5 degrees away from the carrier's track. The move is not dramatic, but it is deliberate. Its wake begins to curve outward, increasing lateral separation. Within minutes, the others follow. The formation dissolves in reverse order. No sharp turns, no visible frustration, just distance being given back, mile by mile. The carrier remains the one constant in the equation. Speed unchanged, heading unchanged, wake unbroken. That consistency is not passive, it is control. The Seahawks' cameras stay live, tracking the disengagement until the range pushes visual detail beyond usefulness. Hulls fade into heat signatures. Heat signatures fade into symbols. At 6:08, the nearest ship drops below 15 knots, well under the speed needed to shape anyone else's maneuvering space. At that point, the move is no longer tactical. It is disengagement. Inside CIC, the Surface Warfare Coordinator updates the log in the same restrained language as before. No adjectives, no conclusions, only facts. Contacts increasing separation, no longer constraining maneuvering. That sentence closes the tactical phase, but not the record. At 6:12, the carrier's escorts ease back into standard spacing. Not visibly, not ceremonially. The electromagnetic picture remains layered, but the focus shifts from immediate readiness to careful watchfulness. The ocean regains its familiar illusion of emptiness, and yet nothing about this moment is ordinary. Because even though no weapons were used, no warnings broadcast, and no public message sent, something permanent has still taken place. Every emission, every helm correction, every hesitation at the edge of escalation has been captured, time-stamped, and preserved. The North Korean ships did not just reveal what they intended to do, they revealed where they stopped. They showed how close they were willing to come, how hard they were willing to press, and exactly where the limit was. That knowledge will last long after the horizon clears. By 6:16, the nearest contact is beyond 5 nautical miles and still widening. Visual confirmation fades completely. Only radar symbols remain, shrinking steadily toward the edge of the display. The Seahawk returns to the deck and lands without urgency. Rotors wind down. The aircraft is secured. Its footage is already archived. On the bridge, the captain finally shifts his gaze. Not toward where the ships were, but toward where the carrier is going. Forward. Always forward. No one speaks of victory. Restraint does not look like victory. It looks like confirmation. Confirmation that pressure was applied, escalation was contained, and that in open water, control does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it is defined by what never happens. Sometimes it belongs to the side that never had to move at all. By 6:21 local time, the ocean has taken back its distance. The 3 North Korean ships are now separated by miles, their tracks steadily diverging. They are no longer coordinated, no longer shaping the carrier's options. On radar, they shrink into ordinary contacts. On the horizon, they are already gone. The carrier never altered course. That fact matters more than anything else. Inside CIC, the logs finalize automatically. Timestamps lock, sensor feeds archive, emission libraries update. The encounter moves from live event to permanent record. Nothing is erased, nothing is exaggerated. This is how such moments end when they are handled properly. No announcements are made over the ship's speakers. No speeches follow. Sailors return to their work without comment. On the flight deck, operations resume at a measured pace. Catapults cycle, aircraft move, rhythm returns. But the ship is not quite the same as it was an hour earlier. Because moments like this are not really about distance. They are about judgment. The North Korean ships did not miscalculate because they came too close. Navies do that all the time. They miscalculated because they believed pressure alone would force a reaction. They believed motion would create leverage. They mistook restraint for hesitation. That was the error. The carrier's real strength was never speed, never maneuver. It was refusal. Refusal to be rushed, refusal to surrender space, refusal to escalate on someone else's timetable. In open water, control belongs to the side that sets the tempo without changing course. The North Korean formation crossed the line between shadowing and obstruction. It compressed maneuvering room deliberately. It advanced without communication. And when the moment came to commit, it hesitated. That hesitation decided everything. The instant doubt enters an intercept, control is already slipping away. By holding course, the carrier handed the decision back to them. Commit fully or break away. They chose to disengage because escalation without advantage is not resolve. It is exposure. No Navy says that out loud. Every Navy understands it. No shots were fired during the encounter, but that does not mean nothing was exchanged. Information moved in one direction. Patterns were exposed, thresholds were identified, limits were mapped. Those details do not fade quickly. The North Korean ships pulled away, having learned exactly how close they could come before pressure stopped working. The carrier continued on, having learned something even more valuable. It never needed to move. At 6:30, the last contact drops beyond the primary surveillance ring. The radar picture simplifies. The sea returns to one dominant shape. Steady, centered, and unchallenged. The carrier continues its mission. This moment will likely never become a headline. No footage will be released, no official statement will follow, no map will spread online. Most people will never know how close the margins were that morning. That is exactly the point. Real dominance is quiet. The most dangerous confrontations are often the ones resolved without spectacle, without sound, and without anyone beyond the ship ever realizing what nearly happened. And the clearest message sent that morning did not come through radio traffic, missiles, or sudden maneuvers. It came from a ship that did not flinch. Because in the end, the greatest mistake was not sending 3 North Korean ships toward an American carrier. The greatest mistake was believing the carrier would need to answer at all.